All right, let's talk Super Bowl ads because when I talk about the best and worst Super Bowl ads of the show of the year, I'm always talking about what's the most effective. How are they effectively communicating their brand, their value proposition? Are they going to make me want to buy their thing? Or is it entertaining? I might talk about it later, but I don't remember what they said. Each 30-second slot costs $8 million, with some of the prime time slots going for more than $10 million. Million dollars with an M, right? That's just for the slot. Then if you're hiring, say, Chris Hemsworth, now you got to pay for Chris Hemsworth. And that's not cheap, right? You got to pay for the set and the costumes and the makeup and all of the thing and the cameramen and the boom operators, all of the things. So when you're spending that much money, are you spending all that money just to entertain people? Or are you actually going to convince people by the thing? So um, I want to talk about the ones that I think were most and least effective. So I am going through some of them. I can't get to all of them because there were a lot, but if you want to check out my blog on this, that is over on my website, Alice, that is AV, as in my initials, Allison Verhalen, that is avwritingservices.com. Over on my blog, Best and Worst Super Bowl Ads of 2026, starting with State Farm. I think this was actually a pretty solid ad. It had Haley Steinfeld, Keegan Michael Key. It was fun. It had Haley Steinfeld looking for insurance, and they were like, "Yeah, we can sell you this, but it's not gonna be as good." She's like, "So you're saying you're not as good as State Farm?" So points for using the State Farm name, not right away, but fairly early on. And then the whole thing was them going through these silly things and being ridiculous because it's their thing, right? That's what they're good at, is being silly and ridiculous and making us laugh. But it was always connected to, you can have this thing, but it's not as good. Yes, this will be cheaper. This is what we're providing, but it's not as good. And then it ended with the big State Farm logo and their State Farm representative, the colors, all of the things. So they did a really good job of, not only was it silly, but there was a reason for the silliness. It was connected to why State Farm is such a good insurance company. So love that one. Toyota had two ads. The first one did not love. Um, it had a bunch of kids talking to their adult selves about, we can do this if we just push ourselves and believe in ourselves, we can accomplish anything. It was awesome. It was so inspirational. It had nothing to do with Toyota. I literally think I saw the Toyota logo name maybe once at the very end, maybe at the beginning, but it was definitely it was not connected to Toyota at all. I loved it as a commercial to be like, oh, isn't that adorable? Did it make me want to buy a Toyota? No, not at all. So that one gets an F. Then there was another Toyota commercial later in the cast that started with a dad taking his young kid and saying, let's go for a drive. Now they're, imagine this, in a car commercial, they're actually getting into a car, which never happened in the first one. So they're getting into a Toyota and he's carefully buckling his kid into the seat. And then it fast forward several decades and the kid is all grown up and he's telling his dad, let's go for a drive. And they're getting into another Toyota and it's clearly a newer model and sleeker and shinier and all the things. That I really liked. It's still not an A. It still didn't really tell me why I should buy a Toyota. But it made that emotional connection and it connected the emotion to Toyota specifically. So solid B. Instacart was this silly ad with Ben Stiller and some other guy I didn't even recognize, just being silly and competitive. And I didn't even know it was an ad for Instacart until the very end when the Instacart logo popped up. And I was like, okay, first of all, I didn't even know what you were selling until the very end. None of that commercial made me want to use Instacart. So that's a big F. Michelob Ultra had a weird one with a bunch of people who were skiing. And so the idea is it's after skiing and they're all going out for beers, and the worst skier has to buy all the beers. And then the worst skier gets taken under the wing of this old guy who's sitting at the bar, and he trains him up and turns him into the best skier. So then they can go back to the bar and get beers, and he doesn't have to buy the beers anymore because he's no longer the worst skier. The story was fun and kind of cute. The story had nothing to do with Michelob Ultra, but I like that they, first of all, they bookended it with you're at the bar buying beers, and then again, you're at the bar buying beers. So you knew right away what you were selling because the Michelob Ultra logo was prominent. It was front and center right at the beginning. This is what we're selling. Okay, great. And then at the end, again, Michelob Ultra. This is what we're selling. Okay, great. So again, I give that one a B. It's not great, but it wasn't terrible either. Apple Music, this was my favorite. The Apple Music was, first of all, it was only like 15 seconds, and they connected it to the Bad Bunny performance, which was brilliant because the Bad Bunny performance is what most of us tuned in for. Let's be honest, there were like 125 plus million people who tuned in to that Super Bowl halftime performance. So Apple Music just said, hey, if you're listening to the song in the halftime show and you don't already have it in your library and you just want to add it to your Apple Music, you can do that during the show with a few clicks. Here's how you do it. That's it. That was the whole ad. It was brilliant. Are they using AI to do that? Probably. Was AI mentioned once in that ad? No, because it doesn't matter. That's a feature, not a benefit. Apple advertising has never wasted time on the features because it knows we don't care. It cares about what can you do for us? How can you make my life better? Well, you want a song that you're listening to right now and you want to know how to add it to your library on your phone? Here's how you do it. Done. End of commercial. Perfect. This is the platonic ideal of commercials. All commercials should be like this. This one gets an A plus, plus, plus for me. Plus is all off the chalkboard around the wall because it gets all the A pluses. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have homes.com, which I don't understand how hard it is to sell homes. And this is because everyone needs one, right? And maybe that's why they're just not trying. But they pay all this money to hire Jeff Goldblum, whom again, not cheap, and then Heidi Gardner, who's I'm sure cheaper than Jeff Goldblum, but still not cheap. And they spend all this time talking about how, first of all, they say briefly, we have so many homes that it's easier to find a place where you can't get a home rather than a place that you can get a home. So then they spend the whole commercial in places like deep in the ocean and in outer space and in the middle of the desert. And why are you spending this all of this time not talking about what you're selling? You're like deliberately avoiding the thing that you're selling. It was so awful. F, major F. Row is a weight loss drug that was featuring Serena Williams, and I guess the ad was fine. I don't love Serena Williams as their spokesperson because if I'm going to buy a weight loss drug, it's going to be from someone who either is overweight or has been overweight and has struggled with this and has said, look, I've been there, I've done that, I've done the exercises, I've done this, that, and the other thing. Nothing worked. So I started Row, and now it works. Serena Williams has always been an athlete. She's always been very much in shape. So why am I going to buy a weight loss drug from her? This just seems like a money grab on her part, which no shade to Serena Williams for getting paid when she can get paid, right? We all got bills to pay. So I'm not mad at her. I just don't think it was an effective ad. Wix, I'm kind of torn on this one because it showed someone putting together a website and making it look beautiful and functional and easy, which is Wix's whole thing. It's like you don't need to be a web designer. You just click a few buttons and we'll do it for you. On the other hand, I had no idea it was an ad for Wix until the very end because it never mentioned Wix until the very, very end. So I would give this one a C because it did a good job of showing what it could do, but you needed stronger brand presence in the ad. Codex, I have no idea what Codex is. I think this ad was supposed to show off all the awesome stuff you can do with AI, but none of it was super compelling. It started with robots failing to do basic stuff, and then later on, the robots are succeeding to do basic stuff. And I still don't understand how does that benefit me? It's like, look, we can do cool stuff. Okay, cool. How does that make my life better? It doesn't. What else we got? Claude, I'm a little torn on. It was this ad for Claude saying, we don't use ads in our content. It was Claude, it was two people at this park talking about fitness, and one of the people is clearly a stand-in for a chatbot, and then it goes off on this tangent that is clearly an ad that this chatbot was told to generate. And then Claude leans into we don't do ads, right? So right off the bat, you can tell it's like an ad for not advertising, which is weird. So it feels kind of counterintuitive. On the other hand, it is talking about how people don't like ads, and so they're solving this problem by not putting ads in there. So I give it a B. Lay's also had two ads, one of which I did not like, and the other I really did. So the one I did not like was the old man hands keys to a woman saying it's time to hang it up, and she says, "How about one last time?" And then they have this montage of her growing up on the farm, and he's growing potatoes, and there's these idyllic shots of her running through the field with a dog. We all love that, right? But it didn't really connect to potato chips. I didn't even see the Lay's potato chips logo or name or anything until the very end. So I have to give that one a C. But the other Lay's commercial had this guy in the middle of the field with the potato, holding the potato chips bag. That's what you need. You got to have that brand front and center throughout the ad so that we know what the heck you're selling. That ad did a much better job. And he was talking about, like, here's where we grow these potatoes, and they're gonna get turned into potato chips and bagged and shipped off to and be at your doorstep within 72 hours. Love it. It's connecting. And again, it goes back to their rebrand, which I talked about earlier. They focused on this rebrand of most people don't realize that it's made out of real potato chips, and that's kind of weird. So maybe let's address that issue. So they did. So that's exactly what this commercial does. Hey, here's real potatoes on the ground. They're going to get turned into potato chips in this lovely bag that will be delivered to your doorstep. So that one gets an A from me. Lays throughout the ad, connected to the potato chips. Perfect. No notes. Meta had a weird ad with a bunch of people doing daring stunts, and then the ad claimed that this meant that athletic intelligence is here, but they had to have a disclaimer at the bottom saying do not attempt. So why would you have an ad showing all the cool stuff you can do and then say don't do this stuff? Because it's really dangerous. That one gets an F. Squarespace, this is another fun commercial. I don't know how effective. It could have been better. It could have been better. It could have been worse. It was a black and white, like artsy looking film with Emma Stone, and she's got this laptop and she's looking for emmastone.com and it says unavailable. And she smashes the laptop so because she's so angry, and then she gets another laptop and looks up the same thing as if the laptop is the problem. And so then it pops up at the very, she gets more and more upset and trashes a bunch of computers. And then at the very end, it has the Squarespace logo pop up and it says, get your domain before you lose it, which, okay, yeah, this is a very real problem that business owners face. Did not really connect Squarespace to solving that issue, though. It just said, this is a problem. Don't have this problem, Squarespace. Like, what? Squarespace, as far as I know, does websites. I honestly did not realize that they do hosting. They could have talked so much more about doing, domain and hosting and all the other cool stuff that they do. It didn't really link this problem to here's how we solve this. It was just a fun way to watch Emma Stone do her thing. So I gave this one a D. T-Mobile had Backstreet Boys singing about T-Mobile. I think the focus was more on the perks of being T-Mobile, like you get a free Slurpee. This was another one that was fun, but like it relied on gimmicks to try to get me to buy T-Mobile. And that makes me think, like, if you need to lean into the gimmicks, your service is probably not that great, so I don't want to buy you or become a customer. Pepsi, I think the idea here is that a polar bear was going through a breakup. We saw a polar bear like in therapy saying it's hard, and he's looking at a bar looking sad. And then this other polar bear shows up next to him and she's holding a Pepsi. And then suddenly they're at a game on the Jumbotron holding Pepsi, presumably living happily ever after. I don't love it, but at the same time, they're selling a soft drink. So it doesn't have to be like there is no USP, right? Unique selling proposition. It's just a frickin' Pepsi. And Pepsi is always really good at showing the logo early and often. And you saw that throughout this ad is that Pepsi logo was right there. So if anyone was feeling thirsty, guess what they were suddenly craving? So I gave that one an A. WeatherTech was another really good one. This ad spent all its time showing all the cool add-ons to your car you can get from WeatherTech, many of which honestly I didn't even know about. And then get extra points for doing so, while every single one clearly and prominently showed the WeatherTech logo. So you were never confused as to like, oh, I can get, that added onto my car. Where do I get that? It was always there. It was like this, you can get this and it'll solve this problem for you and it'll be really cool. And oh, and by the way, here's the company name. So that gets an A. Rocket Redfin Mortgage. What the heck was that ad? This ad was, it was like trying to be super artsy and like, let's all just get together and be friends. Like, what? How is that selling mortgage? So it had, I guess, two like teenage looking girls looking kind of lonely. And I guess one clearly moved to this neighborhood and they're like passing each other, but not really talking to each other. And then there's a B plot. Why? Never mind. We'll talk about the girls. So then there's a storm, and the one girl's dog runs off, and the other girl gets the dog for her and brings it back home. And she's super grateful and hugs this person that, let's be honest, she'll never see again. And then there's a B plot. Why is there a B plot in your Super Bowl commercial? You don't have enough room for that one plot, much less a B plot, which is this dark-skinned guy on a porch waving at his neighbor who's white and grumpy and clearly supposed to be a racist Trump supporter and not talking to the dark-skinned guy until there's a storm and the dark-skinned guy cuts up the branch that ended up in his neighbor's driveway and racism is solved because that's how it works, right? It was so weird. And the Rocket Redfin Mortgage logo, I think, appeared once in the bot, and it was like in the background. It was not even in the foreground. It was like blink and you miss it. It's like way back there while I'm like scanning the screen, going, what the heck are they even trying to sell? And then at the very end, it's Rocket Redfin Mortgage. I'm like, okay, what about that makes me want to get a mortgage? Like, is the neighborhood where you're moving to, does that matter? Yeah, of course that matters. How is Rocket Redfin Mortgage helping you with that? Are they making the mortgage process easy and painless? Because that is not an easy or painless process. How are they helping you through that process? Are they helping you find a good neighborhood where you'll fit in and have cool neighbors? Or are they just throwing you to the wolves and taking your money? I don't, it was an F. It was a raging F. I hated that commercial. It was so much. Dove, I wanted to like this because I love Dove products and it had a feminist angle, and that's a great way to reel me in, is that feminist angle. But it had, so the feminist angle was a bunch of girls on a soccer field and they're like chanting and dancing and gearing each other up before the big game, and then they clap and they go off, right? And then they're off to win the game. Love it. Except it had nothing to do with Dove products. Again, it was just Dove at the end. You saw the logo in the end. It did nothing to say, like, hey, we can keep you moisturized while keeping you fresh for the big game. That's all you had to do, and they couldn't even do that much. So I'm sorry, Dove, I have to give that one an F. Levi's was an ad with a montage of butts and jeans. I don't think we even saw the Levi's logo until the very end. So it was just like, why are we looking at a bunch of butts? And again, there was nothing like, here's why you should buy Levi's over all of the other denim brands out there. So that one gets an F. Nerds, I'm kind of torn on. So apparently nerds are in gummy form now. And my real question here is, why are nerds in gummy form? Because there are lots of gummy candies out there. I don't know of any other candies that have these small little pebble-like candies, right? So I don't know that there was anyone really going, you know what I want is nerds in gummy form. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was a bunch of market research where some people who love nerds were like, yes, that is what I really want, is nerds in gummy form. Okay, if that's the case, great. As it is, it just seems to me like they're getting away from their USP and trying to broaden their audience, which don't do that. Just don't do that. That said, I did like the commercial where Andy Cohen is like, oh, you're in gummy form now. Well, we have to reintroduce you to the world. And now there's this whole makeover montage. And then they're at some big premiere and ta-da, nerds gummies. And Andy Cohen looks pleased with himself because he's Andy Cohen. Why wouldn't he be pleased with himself? So I mean, in that sense, the ad was fine. If you're reintroducing this new product, yeah, that's the way to do it, because that's basically what a rebrand is. It's kind of like a makeover, and then ta-da, we're reintroducing you to the world. So not a bad ad. I wish I could see the market research that said, well, we really need our nerds gummies. So, but the ad itself, I'm going to have to give it an A because the product research is not Not something I was in on, so I can't judge it. If I'm just judging the ad for what it is, the ad is an A. The getting into new markets, I'm not sure that's a good move, but again, I'm not involved in those research rooms, so I don't know. Uber Eats had me totally confused. It was something about Matthew McConaughey keeps annoying Bradley Cooper because of some sort of beef that they're having. And then, Cooper says they'll never agree, so just give up. And I mean, Matthew McConaughey was always like holding groceries while he was annoying Bradley Cooper. But again, none of it made me want Uber Eats, which again is like, how hard is it to sell, like, oh, you're hungry now? You're watching the game and you ran out of nachos? Guess what? We can help with that. How hard is that to sell? So I had to give that one an F. Bosch I like because these ads, this one had a standard, what looks like a standard white guy saying, "Oh, I was just a guy until I used Bosch," and at which point he transforms into Guy Fieri, which I gotta love the play on just a guy and then Guy Fieri. I love that. I also like the play on words and the idea of, you use these tools and they make you feel powerful. I do wish they had a version for women instead of, this very male dominated ad. But as an ad, it's not bad. I'll still give it an A. Copilot, I really like this ad. This featured an NFL recruiter looking at what an athlete can do and then asking Copilot to assemble a bunch of data on some of the top performing athletes, their stats, what it would take to recreate that. And he looks up at the athlete that Copilot just described, and that's the athlete standing right in front of him. I love that they connected it to football for an ad played during a football game. I love that it showed what AI can do. It's like, it's not just like, here's all the cool tech. It's like, this is how we will make your life better. So that gets an A. There's this other ad that I did not understand. It was a bunch of toilets singing, "Take a Look at Me Now." And you spend the whole time going, what are they talking about? And then towards the end, it says, "Take a look at your pee." And if it's yellow, you need to hydrate. And there's a glass of water, and someone poured something into the water. And that was it. That was the ad. I was writing this immediately after having watched the ad. I still had no idea what the ad was for. I have no idea what the product was. So that's a fail. Intuit TurboTax was an ad featuring Adrian Brody trying to be moody and dramatic in an ad for tax services, but then they pull back the fourth wall and try to get as like they're making the ad and saying, "Adrian, you're supposed to be happy about taxes because we make it fun and easy." And he's like, "I don't do fun and easy. There's no drama, there's no Adrian," and he storms off. So it was an okay ad. I don't know that a lot of people are really going to connect it to Intuit TurboTax or if they're just going to see Adrian Brody being silly. It almost seemed more like an ad for Adrian Brody than it did for Intuit TurboTax. I give it a B because it did do a good job of, again, you saw Intuit TurboTax early and often. You saw that brand, so that was good. And it did do a good job of explaining like yeah, no, we want people to be happy about this because we're taking this onerous process that everyone dreads and making it fun and easy. Maybe not fun, but easy. Um, so that one got a B from me. Universal Orlando Resort. I love this one. It featured a small boy, and throughout it, he was called Little Man, and he's, like I said, a small boy. So he's like in the park. And again, we saw the Universal sign early, so we knew which park we were at. It did a pretty good job of showing the highlights, all the most exciting parts of some of their most popular rides. It had one moment where he's like measuring himself to see if he's tall enough, if he meets the minimum height requirement to go on a ride, and he's like, yes. And I love that because it's super relatable, right? We all know that feeling of being a little kid and we want to be tall enough to get on the ride, and we're all being told we're too small, little man, little girl, whatever. Love it. And like I said, Universal, I was never confused as to which park we were selling. It was there front and center, so loved it. Uh, Duncan was so off the walls. This time there was no Matt Damon. There was Ben Affleck saying, what if Good Will Hunting was made as a comedy? Because that's a thing that we need. So Ben Affleck is playing the Matt Damon character, but instead of working as a janitor, he's working at a Dunkin' Donuts. And someone says, "Did you arrange the donuts in the Fibonacci sequence again?" That part was pretty strong, right? Because all you need is a shot of donuts to make people want donuts. So I give them points for that. But then it went off on this tangent where they're talking about something completely different, and it was almost like making fun of all these different moments in different '90s sitcoms, which is funny. But again, none of that sells Dunkin' to me. It doesn't sell me donuts. It doesn't sell me coffee. It sells me on wanting to rewatch Friends because I always want to rewatch Friends. But it that was a fail. I'm sorry. At some point, it was just a sitcom taking place in Dunkin' instead of an ad for Dunkin'. Coinbase, the ad had nothing to do with money or cryptocurrency, so that's an F. Oh, by the way, that was a D that I gave the Dunkin' commercial because it started off strong and we always knew we were in a Dunkin', but it could have been a lot better. Bueno, this ad was super cute. It featured a lot of people in trouble and they were saying, no bueno. And then someone else would say yes bueno because of and then XYZ. I love like I said, I love a good wordplay, and this was a good wordplay on bueno the candy, and bueno meaning good, and the term no bueno, which is so ubiquitous at this point that even we gringos know it. So yeah, no, I liked it. And then at the end, not only did they show again, they were showing the candy throughout, so that is bueno. And they also ended it by showing off all the tasty things, and there was kind of a brief description of what's in the candy. So excellent. I gave that one an A. Raisin Bran. It's a weird one. This ad featured William Shatner as Will Shat, which I think was supposed to be a play on the past tense of shit. I would not normally condone a commercial focusing on poop, especially a commercial that you're trying to sell food. Um, and yet, this commercial did kind of manage to dance around. It was clear they were talking about poop, but did it in an indirect enough way that it was still fun and happy. So you know what? I'll let them have that one. I think it would have been more effective to talk it up as a healthy cereal that actually tastes good. But again, they showed the Raisin Bran logo early and often, kind of throughout that commercial. So I give it a C. It could have been better. It could also have been a lot worse. And then there was the Southwest commercial showing, the airport is a jungle and they have people on an escalator and going through security and all these airport things, but they're in a jungle and then they're trying to find their seats. And the ending is now we have assigned seating, so you don't have to worry about this anymore. Okay. The problem with that is that's not unique. In fact, not having assigned seating made Southwest unique. So now you're just solving a problem that you created. Well done. So that one gets an F from me. EOS is a body spray. This one started with Mikey Day hosting Is It Cake? And someone, the contestants have to guess of all these items, what is cake? And someone guesses the boom operator's cake because she smells like cake, which is so stupid. And of course, the boom operator says, no, I'm using EOS. It just smells like cake. And Mikey Day says, there's only one way to find out. And he pulls out a sharp knife and chases her down. That does not make me want to use EOS body spray at all. Also, am I the only one who does not want to smell like food, or is that just a me thing? I love smelling like flowers. I'll use flower scented body spray all day, every day, but I don't want to smell like food. But maybe that's just me. Bud Light had a barrel of Bud Light tips over and goes tumbling down a hill. This is at a wedding. Everyone is so eager not to lose the beer. They all go tumbling down after it. It's fine. Again, you're selling Bud Light, so it doesn't have to be super anything. So it was fine. I'll give it an A because again, Bud Light, front and center, all the way through. The last one, I am running out of time here, but I did want to focus real quick on this. What was it? What was this commercial? With Alexa, Chris Hemsworth. Okay, this is another one that was super fun to watch, but doesn't actually make me, it actually makes me actively avoid Alexa. So Chris Hemsworth walks in on his wife talking to Alexa, and he's like, that thing could kill me. And Alexa's like, what do you mean? How could I kill you? And he says a million different ways. And then there's this montage of him doing things around the house, and the robot literally murders him. With all the people who are afraid of AI, why are you focusing on how robots can kill you? That is the opposite of what you should be doing. Then at the very end, it's, hey, you look tense. Why don't I schedule a massage for you with a cinnamon body scrub? And he's like, really? You can do that? I do love a cinnamon body scrub. Like, okay, that should be your focus. Like, here's how I can make your life easier. You're a busy movie star. you have all these things on your plate. Why don't I make your life easier by taking some of these things off your plate? That's a good AI commercial. But promoting the fact that AI can kill you, or the idea, at least I shouldn't say the fact, the idea of AI actively trying to kill you, like, don't focus on that. So that's my big one. The other one was ChatGPT, which I actually kind of liked. I was talking to someone about this ad where, this guy is handing off the farm to his daughter and it's been in the family for generations. And he's like, it was such a good, heartfelt commercial. And I said, what was it selling? He had no idea. He actually thought it was a wealth management commercial. I had to go through my notes and be like, oh no, that was a ChatGPT commercial. So that one was a fail because yes, he liked it. Yes, it pulled on his heartstrings. He had no idea what it was trying to sell. So that is a massive fail. These are just some of the ones that I covered. I covered more. Again, that's over on my website. AV, as in my initials, Allison Verhalen. That is avwritingservices.com. And if you have any questions about marketing, about my favorite Super Bowl ads, about Bad Bunny, about your marketing strategy for 2026, always have, because we do always want to make sure that you are getting the most out of the money that you are spending. We don't just want to be entertaining, we want to be effective. So if you want to talk about that for 2026, reach out. You can reach me again, my website, avwritingservices.com. You can reach me directly at info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Have a great weekend. Happy blogging, everyone.